Everyone, welcome to week 4 of The Unshakable Life. This past Sunday we talked about courage, and first of all, I love that in a series on godly character, we took the time as a church to make courage a priority. I love what C.S. Lewis said, that courage is every virtue when it's at its testing point, right? In other words, courage comes in handy anytime that one of our virtues calls us into uncomfortable or painful territory. So we looked at Ruth as a model for courage, and we saw that courage influenced what seemed to be every decision that she made. And from her life, we were able to draw 4 distinctions between godly courage and worldly courage. We said that 1, godly courage seeks to please God, while worldly courage seeks praise, profit, or self-preservation. This, more than anything else, seems to distinguish biblical courage from worldly courage. To add to this point, Hebrews 11:6 says that without faith it is impossible to please God. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says that all things should be done for God's glory. At the end of the day, courage isn't biblical unless it's purposeful. And the purpose is never for ourselves, but rather it's in service and submission to God. Number 2, we said that godly courage is thoughtful, but worldly courage is impulsive. Godly courage considers principles and consequences, especially when time allows for it, right? But worldly courage is generally impulsive. It acts in spite of consequences and in spite of principles. For Christians, we're not called to courage by ignoring risks. We're called to courage that is well aware of risks. Even our Savior, Jesus Christ, encouraged would-be followers to count the cost. Number 3, godly courage is willing to accept true sacrifice. But worldly courage is more like false sacrifice. It's the appearance of sacrifice, right? Godly courage never asks the question, what's in it for me? But worldly courage tends to be more calculated. It's only going to do something risky if the potential payoff seems worthwhile. Lastly, number 4, godly courage is driven by righteousness. Worldly courage is driven by pride and greed. I love how evident it was that Ruth's courage came from a place of righteousness. And as we talked about, man, without righteousness, without a principled life, we cannot expect to be courageous. If you don't know why you stand for the things that you stand for, or if you don't stand for anything at all, then it's going to be impossible to take a stand, right? It's just going to be next to impossible to stand your ground when you need to. It takes some virtue, some principles, some sense of morality in order to be able to act with courage. And there's so much more that could be said about godly courage, and there are even more differences between godly courage and worldly courage that we weren't even able to flesh out in our sermon. But I hope that as a small group, you'll take the time to thoroughly investigate and discuss these ideas. And most of all, I hope that we see that courage is not just for the big moments. And as a small group, I want you to take time to consider the different ways that courage can play a significant role in everyday life. How can we develop courage in everyday life, even what seems ordinary? What are some ways that courage comes into play for each of us? Thank you so much for being a part of your small group, and I hope that you have a great meeting.